Smokepit Fairytales by Trip Ainsworth. Chapter 3. Walakium Assalam. I got exactly 0 sleep that night. I spent it with PMO and NCIS. When I got off duty, I threw my uniform in the trash, took a shower, and slept until the early afternoon. When I woke up, I didn't get out of bed. I laid there enjoying the warmth. I checked my phone. Kennedy had sent me some texts about going to town that night with Reagan and Doc. It didn't seem like too terrible of an idea. Staring at the ceiling, I wondered if I really needed to blow off steam or chill. I decided that if I went out drinking, it would get to the point where my mind would be honest with itself and I'd either go hog wild or find a nice quiet place to relax. I forced myself out of bed, brushed my teeth, and combed my hair. It always took an extra minute to do the hair. Marine Corps regulations state that hair shall be no longer than 3 inches long. Mine was 7. So I had to be careful fixing it so no one would call me out. I know it's hard to understand, but imagine a forward-combed faux hawk with no hair at all below the temples. In spite of my best efforts, I still vaguely smelled like vomit. I got the rest of myself together and drove to Kennedy's apartment. She rented the second floor of a house about 2 blocks away from the beach in Oceanside. It was cozy. There was a little kitchen that she shared with the people downstairs. Her living room and bedroom weren't segregated by anything except a love seat that rested a few feet away from the foot of her bed. The walls were decorated with posters of pinup girls and wooden masks from Central Asia. There was a beautiful view of the beach from the patio. Kennedy and I stood on the patio smoking and drinking pomegranate martinis she mixed. An Aerosmith vinyl played from inside the apartment. L.A. wasn't bad growing up in. Kennedy sucked on her menthol. Is that how you ended up being a stripper? I joked. She smiled and said, "Oh, fuck off, Joker. My sister didn't like it and moved to Chicago." "What's she doing out there?" "Going to school. She's studying some kind of engineering, but I really couldn't tell you what." I shrugged. "What about you?" "What about me?" "Tell me about Afghanistan, Hank." I grimaced. "Yeah, I don't really want to talk about that." "Okay," Kennedy said solemnly. "Well, what about the horns on the front of your Jeep?" Doc and I were off-roading through an impact range a while back, and we found this buffalo that had been blown in half before the coyotes had their way with it. I tried to strap the head to the back of the Jeep, but when I packed it up, the horns fell off, so I pulled those off and put them on the grill instead. "Did you wash your hands after that?" Kennedy laughed and bit her bottom lip. "No, we went straight to the 101 Cafe and got breakfast. We had a few more drinks and spouted off nonsense about how life seems futile and incoherent. Lance corporals in the Marine Corps and strippers are the pinnacle of philosophy, and as we all know, if you give anyone just a few drinks, they can solve all the world's problems." The sun bounced its golden beams off the Pacific's waves, making white diamonds in the blue. Kennedy opened the top of her white Chafton dress, revealing a scarlet and cream-colored lace mess of a brassiere. She moved closer to me with her martini in one hand as she embraced my body and kissed me on the neck. My hands caressed her shoulders, making their way to the small of her back. Her sweet lips met mine. Her tongue danced in my mouth better than she did on the pole. She ran her hands through my hair, caressing my scalp as I slid my hands under her skimpy black panties. My hands grabbed her shapely ass, and I pulled her hips into mine. Our lips broke contact so she could pour the rest of her martini into my mouth. She put the glass on her end of the table without looking away from me. I caressed my way to the small of her back. I slid my hands into the sides of her skimpy black panties. I groped her caboose and pulled her hips into mine. She stood on her toes, and her lips made their way to the back of my ear. Kennedy's breath grew heavy. I ran my tit-grabbing hand to her shoulder blade and my other to the back of her upper thigh. I leaned her back, picked her up, and carried her to the bed. The next couple of hours felt like heaven. Her, my angel. Her clothes looked amazing, carelessly disregarded on the floor. We laid on the bed in the still of the night. She hugged the arm I wrapped around her shoulders. "Hank?" "Kennedy?" "Why won't you tell me about Afghanistan?" "Why do you want to know so badly?" I asked in an annoyed tone. "My dad doesn't talk to me much because he doesn't approve of my lifestyle. His job takes him back to that part of the world a lot. He spends most of his time abroad," she confessed. Kennedy reached over to her nightstand and showed me a photo of her parents, siblings, and herself in front of the pyramids at Giza. "He took us to Egypt when I was a kid. My mom told me he's been in Afghanistan for the last few months. I figured that maybe your insight might let me in on what's going on in his life." I took a deep breath and thought, Afghanistan was like the remnants of a beautiful paradise that an unspeakingly grim war burnt to the ground.
A place where the survivors fought both tooth and nail for 1,000 different things, of which only they knew the importance. Then we showed up and tried to rebuild what the Soviets decimated, but the people there were too busy fighting each other over trivial bullshit instead of working together for a better future. So we stood with the side that didn't kill women and children as much and started mercilessly hunting down and stamping the life out of the Taliban, but not without shedding our fair share of blood into the sand. I decided to let Kennedy down easy.
Afghanistan was beautiful, and the people were very nice when they weren't trying to kill you. Kennedy squeezed my arm a bit tighter. I've also been thinking, what if we go to war with Iran? What about it? Well, would you fight? Well, yeah. I joined the Marine Corps to go kill people, not sit around stateside with a thumb up my ass. Personally, I'd rather get my hands on those ISIS fucks, but Iran wouldn't be a bad fight. Terrorist-supporting bastards. They're probably funding ISIS. Iran isn't just a bunch of terrorists, Hank. No, but their government is. A war with Iran would be just like a war with Iraq. Half the Iranian army would surrender and the U.S. would spend half a decade killing insurgents from third world countries. Iran wouldn't really be a problem, but it would turn into another Al-Qaeda or ISIS or a fucking proxy war with the Russians or the Chinese. So you'd have no problem just going straight over there and fighting? Not really. I mean, all that bullshit you hear in the movies where the main character says something stupid like a real warrior prays for peace and only goes to war when it's absolutely needed is straight bullshit. If you want peace, go be a politician and make peace happen by not letting things get to where a war has to happen at all. I can't speak for the Army or the Air Force, but Marines pray to God for war before we go to sleep every night. What would we do without it? There'd be no point to exist. There are people out there with problems, and those people need to be killed. All that coexist bullshit is a fantasy. You can't coexist with people that want to kill you. I want to put all the people who think pacifism and peace can be achieved by putting down our guns, smoking weed and hugging on a plane and drop them off in the Helmand Problem in Afghanistan and let them see firsthand how that works. They get raped a few times and then have their heads cut off. If they were lucky. Yeah, Kennedy sighed with frustration. I mean, I don't know how the world works, but I do know that there are people out there who need a 50 caliber aspirin for their head, especially those ISIS cunts. I'd go kill those fuckers tonight. It's not that people are out there just killing people just to kill them. They have an ideology, however fucked up it may be. I mean, do you think that the assholes out there who cut off a woman's face because she's trying to learn how to read would stop being the fucking pieces of shit they were if some pot-smoking hippie just gave them a hug? Okay, Hank, I get it. And another thing, all these Woodstock-going, free-loving fucking pussies that want to live in harmony, what do they want to live in harmony with these goat fucking cocksuckers for and spin their... Hank! Kennedy cut me off. I get it. I think I pissed her off, but, she asked for it. I looked at the clock. Weren't we supposed to go see Reagan and Doc tonight? Yeah, I'll call Reagan. She irked. Kennedy stood out of bed and walked to the bathroom. I put on my jeans and my denim patch jacket and walked to the patio. I leaned on the rails and looked into the western sky. Kennedy came outside clothed in a tight leopard print top and dark blue jeans. They're going to come pick us up in about 10 minutes. She didn't look too happy. Go put your shirt on. She started to walk past me. I stopped her and planted my lips on hers, then wordlessly retrieved my Slayer shirt. I saw her smile at me from the corner of her eye. I knew she wasn't really that mad at me, but she wanted to act indignant anyway.
Fucking women.
Once Doc and Reagan showed up, Kennedy and I loaded into the Mustang. I looked into the rearview mirror at Doc's face. Hey, Doc, what happened to your face? I pretended not to know.
I don't know, man. I woke up with it. I don't really remember much from last night.
I smiled at Doc. Okay, man. Where are we going tonight?
The Kraken.
Doc replied. Reagan turned around to face Kennedy. Yeah, it's got a good atmosphere. Oh, I know. I pointed at Kennedy. Have you two gone there before together? Kennedy looked over at me. Yeah, we used to go all the time. The Kraken was already packed. There was a real shit band butchering an old Styx song. I was probably the only Marine there, Doc the only sailor. We were definitely the only people under 30. We ordered some drinks and then proceeded to the smoking area in the back. We bullshitted for a while, smoked a few cigarettes, and even danced for a bit, although I only dance when the booze convinces me that just because I can't dance doesn't mean I shouldn't. The combination of martinis at Kennedy's place and the rum and cokes here had begun to take a toll on me. And that's when my phone started buzzing. Normally I didn't pick up the phone while I was out, but the caller ID said it was Corporal Scott. I answered the phone with a cocky, "Good evening, Corporal."
Hey, Allensworth. What are you doing right now?
Corporal Scott said over the phone. I'm in the process of getting so drunk I forget how to speak English.
Well, I have good news and bad news. Which one do you want first?
The good news, Corporal.
Hey, you're getting promoted tomorrow.
I turned away from my phone to Doc and screamed, "Hey, Doc!" over the blaring music of the trash band. I'm getting promoted tomorrow.
Tomorrow's Saturday, man.
Doc screamed back at me with the beer raised. I redirected my attention to the phone. Corporal, don't you mean Monday?
No, it's tomorrow. Ready for the bad news?
What is it? I sighed.
There's a battalion formation at midnight.
What the fuck for?
I don't fucking know, Allensworth. Just be here. I got a bunch more broke dicks to call tonight, and I don't have time to hold your hand.
The phone went silent. I stared dumbfounded at the phone. Motherfucker. I looked over to Doc. Hey man, I just got a call that said battalion formation at midnight.
What?
Doc looked at his watch.
That's in an hour and a half.
Yeah, we gotta leave now. I looked around the room. Where are the girls?
In the head.
Okay, I'll get them. Go start the car. Doc left and I hunted Kennedy and Reagan down and explained to them what was happening. By the time we exited the building, the Mustang was already idling in the street. We sped the whole way up to Camp Pendleton. The traffic was terrible for the night. It was usually people fleeing base for the weekend, not the other way around. The gate guards weren't even checking IDs. They were just waving everyone onto the base. Yeah, Doc, I don't think this is just our battalion.
No, something big had to happen. At least they're not checking people, though. I am way too drunk to be driving.
We set down the long, dark, winding road to our part of Pendleton. Doc got a call similar to the one I did about the formation. We got to our barracks in Margarita and changed into uniform. We told the girls to stay in my room and headed to the battalion's parade deck. Doc found his aid station sailors and I found combat camera. We assembled into formation and were called to attention. The battalion commander stood in front of us and instructed us to stand at ease. Good evening, gentlemen. Unless you've been living under a rock, you know the situation with ISIS in Iraq. I cracked a smile.
We're finally going after these pieces of shit.
Apparently, the Islamic Republic of Iran
Wait, what?
has also gotten tired of the Islamic State. 9 hours ago, Iran sent ground forces into the Republic of Iraq. Currently, the Pentagon is deciding on what course of action is to be taken in the event of Congress or the President ordering us into action. Seeing as how the United States currently still has about 10,000 troops in Iraq, I don't think the decision will be too hard to make. The 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit is making its way up the Persian Gulf and standing by for orders. Meanwhile, the 1st Marine Division will prepare for deployment. I know for a fact that we are ready to leave tonight if we get the tasking. That being said, be prepared to draw your weapons and wait for the buses within an hour's notice of getting the call. If you live in the barracks, don't stray too far off base. Get all your gear together and have your sea bags packed and have it sitting by the door. We live in uncertain times, gentlemen. Good night. The battalion commander walked off with the other officers and we fell out of formation. The combat camera marines stood in a circle around Gunnery Sergeant Cantute.
All right, fuckers. I know it's Friday and half of you are drunk, but I need you all in here tomorrow at 8.
The platoon groaned about the thought of coming in on a Sunday, bright and early.
Don't give me that shit!
Cantute barked.
Come in with your gear. I'm going to issue your camera kits, so if things do pop off, we can get out of here quickly. The faster you work tomorrow, the faster you'll get off and be able to spend time with your families.
When we were dismissed, I went and found Doc. What the fuck is this shit about? I asked.
Yeah, if I had to guess, I would say that Iran thinks we're too tired of war and unwilling to invade a country we just pulled out of to go back and fight them. So they're taking advantage of the fuck ISIS bandwagon and pissing on us all in the same sweep.
Doc replied. Yeah, but we were in Afghanistan when we invaded Iraq in 2003. That makes no fucking sense, I replied as I lit a cigarette. Shit, we just got back less than a year and a half ago and the Comcam guys are still over there. Not to mention the Marines that are already in Iraq fighting those goat-fucking Islamic State fucks.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
Doc said, puzzled. Yeah, well, in the words of Lewis Burwell Puller, as long as we have the 1st Marine Division, we'll be all right.
Hank, shut up. You get too motivated when you drink.
Hurrah! I smiled and gave him the thumbs up. When we got back to the barracks, Doc took Reagan to his room. I told Kennedy what happened at the formation. She didn't say anything for a while. I don't think she knew what to say, even if she wanted to. I just held her until she fell asleep. That night, I dreamt I was driving an old Pontiac GTO down a desert highway. There was an accident on the side of the road, and I stopped to help. As soon as I got out of my car, a fuel truck exploded as it passed me on the freeway. The fire melted the green paint off the GTO, but the rest of the car remained intact. From the fire, a giant red face rose through the flames. It had 3 glaring eyes and the mouth of a demonic great white shark under which a long black beard grew. It laughed at me. When I turned away, I saw Satin, my ex, pulling a totem pole out of the wrecked car on the side of the road. I didn't know what to think of that when I woke up. I got out of bed and showered and shaved. I woke up Kennedy and gave her the keys to my Jeep so she didn't have to stay on base all day. She told me she was going to sleep in for a while. I walked to the shop. Work wasn't nearly as exciting as I thought it would be. We held a quick promotion ceremony. Corporals Meowry and Scott pinned the new 2 stripes of corporal on my collar. Then we divvied up camera equipment and prearranged teams for deployment. The teams were set up by battalion. 2 or 4 Marines were assigned to the infantry battalions that weren't currently deployed. Then if whichever battalion were sent down range, the respective combat cameramen would attach to them. My team was Lance Corporal Stats, Lance Corporal Eclair, Sergeant Hunter, and me. If called, we were going back to 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines. Stats had been on my first deployment with me, and Hunter was the team leader on the 2nd. Eclair had only been in the fleet for a few months and had no combat experience. It was pretty close-knit with the team, except Eclair, who was a fucking boot. For the next few weeks, no one left base unless they were married and lived in town. Veterans spun up the boots on how to operate in the field. I helped Eclair put attachments on his flak. Put the grenade pouch here, and put your drop pouch on your belt. The drop pouch was essentially a gallon-sized pocket used for quick storage. Take the strap on your camera and clip it to your grenade pouch so it's dummy corded to you in case you accidentally drop it. When you're not using your camera, keep it in your drop pouch. I picked up his flak. Put your med pack on this side and your magazine pouch on the other so you can get to him easy.
What if I want them up front, Corporal?
Eclair asked. Then, Boot, you'll be a teeter-totter and you'll be 4 inches higher off the ground when you're down on your belly. Do you really want to be any higher than you have to be when Alibaba is shooting shit at you?
No, Corporal.
Then don't put anything on the front of your flak if you can help it. You want to be able to get as flat as possible.
Aye, Corporal.
After showing him how everything was set up, I completely disassembled all of his gear. Eclair gave his gear a pathetic look. All right, Boot, now put it back together. I lit a cigarette and watched him reassemble his flak and pack.
Corporal?
What?
You deployed with 2-7 to Afghan, right?
Yep.
What is it like? What is the battalion like?
Well, I paused to French inhale the thick smoke from the Lucky. Don't be embarrassed if you piss your pants in your first firefight. Just keep pushing and don't pussy out. At first, combat is nothing short of sheer terror, but after a while, you just get pissed off and want to kill shit. Trust me, my first firefight, I was scared as shit, but eventually I got used to it. Eclair looked at me confused. Keep putting your shit together, Boot. He went back to working on assembling his pack. Now, the 7th Marine Regiment is the greatest group of warriors that has ever treaded the earth. You'll be in good hands, I explained.
If 7th Marines is so great, why does everyone always talk about 5th Marines?
Eclair asked. Because when 5th Marines went to World War I, 7th Marines were too busy fighting guerrillas in South America to care about what Europe was doing. Either way, as long as you're in the Blue Diamond, you'll be okay. The 1st Marine Division's logo was a red number 1 inside of a blue diamond encircled by 5 stars. You know when they talk about every climb in place?
Yes.
They're really talking about the 1st Marine Division. Eclair smiled at that.
Aye, Corporal.
During the day, we'd listen to the news on the radio about the escalating situation in the Middle East. Kennedy would drive on base to see me after work. At night, we stayed drunk in the barracks. Most Marines loitered on the catwalks, smoking cigarettes and playing guitar. During a game of beer pong in the smoke pit, one of the Marines came outside screaming that the Iranian Navy sunk an American warship in the Persian Gulf. Everyone started asking questions and pulled out their phones to find any news on the situation. All anyone could find out was that the Iranian Navy vessel had fired on a U.S. Navy ship. I couldn't find anything about anything sinking on either side. Kennedy sat on the gravel and nervously lit a cigarette. She panted and shook as she tried to smoke. I sat, wrapping my arm around her shoulders in an effort to calm her down. It'll be all right, Kennedy. I don't want you to go over there. I haven't gotten word that that's a for sure thing yet, babe. How could you not know? Kennedy's eyes watered and tears started flowing from her eyes. Well, even if we do go, you don't have to worry about me. But I am worried about you, she whimpered, eyes becoming more bloodshot by the minute. Babe, I paused and took a hit from the cigarette. When Iran and Iraq fought in the 80s, they were pretty equally matched, and then we kicked Iraq's ass, I exhaled. Twice. Adding some insurgents to the mix just makes it a target-rich environment. Kennedy went from a whimper to panting wails. She clutched my jacket and buried her face in my chest and screamed, People still died, and I don't want to deal with that shit. I picked her up and took her to my room to let her cry it out. The next day at our morning formation, we were told that the 2nd and 3rd Battalions from the 7th Marine Regiment, 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines, 1st Battalion, 1st Marines, along with 1st Tank Battalion and elements of the 3rd Marine Air Wing were deploying to combat the Iranian aggression in Iraq. We also got the full report from the naval incident in the Gulf. Gunnery Sergeant Cantu told us,
Yesterday, the USS Pearl Harbor, currently deployed with the Macon Island Amphibious Ready Group carrying the 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit, hit an Iranian sea mine and lost control of their well deck, which shortly thereafter flooded. This wasn't a catastrophic hit because the ship's well deck was designed to be flooded to deploy amphibious vehicles. After the Pearl Harbor put her fires out, an Iranian frigate fired several missiles at her. Most of the missiles either missed or were shot down. One, however, hit the Pearl Harbor and disabled her power, leaving her dead in the water. The crew managed to put out the fires and keep her afloat. Shortly after, 2 F-18 Super Hornets from the USS Harry Truman carrying anti-ship missiles located and fired upon the Iranian frigate. The frigate was critically damaged and leaned to port. She burned for several hours until the fire reached her ammunition magazines and detonated, thus sinking the ship. The Iranian survivors were rescued and are currently being held on the USS Macon Island and the USS Truman. The Pearl Harbor is currently being towed to Bahrain.
Holy shit.
Eclair whispered.
Yeah, holy shit.
Cantu spouted.
This morning, 3-1 landed in the Iraq port city of Al-Fad to secure a beachhead.
How'd they get there so soon?
Eclair asked. They're the Muse landing team, Corporal Scott answered. Cantu continued.
Here's the meat, gentlemen. The battalions I listed earlier are set to deploy. If you're going to with 7th Marines, what's going to happen is tomorrow at 05, you're mustering here and you'll be driven to 29 Palms. Everyone deploying with anyone else is to stand by for further orders. You guys have the rest of the day to get your shit together. Make sure you have all your gear here tomorrow at 05. You'll draw weapons and buses will take you up to the stumps.
That night at the barracks, Marines partied like coked out 80s rock stars on the eve of the apocalypse. The ground was littered with broken beer bottles, crushed cans, and cigarette butts. Every genre of music blared from the rooms. The moans of girlfriends and female Marines could be heard, and since it was Iran, every fucking Marine who owned a copy of 300 with Gerard Butler watched it at maximum volume cranked to 11. I sat on my rack. The room's only light came from the floodlights through the half-open blinds. I had a bottle of rum in my hand. Kennedy emerged from the bathroom wearing only a forced smile. She didn't come to me. She danced. She didn't give me the whorish frolicking of an oceanside stripper. It was the seductive gyration of a Mediterranean belly dancer. Her torso melodically flowed like a brook tumbling over stones. Her thighs quivered and her feet danced her across the room. I could only see every other inch of her. The blinds cast shadows on her body, leaving black stripes. The California sunset subtly beamed between the shades, painting her orange and red. Kennedy moved her hips in a figure-8 pattern. She slid her fingers between the lips between her legs and dipped them into her mouth. She danced like a fire on a candle in a thunderstorm, struggling to keep a flame. I sipped my rum and clutched the headrest. She shimmied and twirled. Her arms were fighting serpents. Kennedy appeared as a golden goddess, engaged in a sword fight against invisible demons. Her hair was black waves of a sea in turmoil. She finished her dance by dragging off my jeans. Neither of us got more than an hour of sleep that night. Nothing beats please don't die sex. In the dark California morning, the Marines who were to go to the desert stood with their loved ones by the parade deck waiting for the buses. We had drawn our weapons from the armory about an hour before. The air was cool and the wind blew gently. Everyone's sea bags and packs were neatly lined in rows. The area was filled with wives and girlfriends embracing their Marines. Eclair smoked by the road with his M16 slung across his body with his muzzle towards the sky. Hey, Boot, what are you doing? I barked.
I'm going over to my packs, Corporal.
He said, confused. Why the fuck is your weapon slung like that? Eclair looked at me wide-eyed. Look at everyone else. All their muzzles are facing to the dirt, right? Eclair glanced at the crowd of Marines.
Yes, Corporal.
Fix your fucking self. How are you going to fit in with the grunts if you look fucked up when you're compared to the pogues?
Aye, Corporal.
He said, almost scared. Who taught you to carry it like that anyway?
My combat instructors.
Well, they're fucking idiots, and so are your fucking drill instructors. Go find Sergeant Hunter.
Aye, Corporal.
Eclair paced away. Doc, Reagan, and Kennedy and I stood smoking cigarettes until the buses came. Kennedy nor I smoked. We just held each other. I didn't know what to think about Kennedy. We hadn't been together for all that long, and I didn't think I was in love with her, but only God knew how long I was going to be gone, and it would be nice to have someone waiting for me at home. I thought about telling her I loved her, but only because it would make her feel better. I ultimately decided against it. The white buses resembled the yellow ones I rode to school when I was a kid. They sat idling as the senior Marines called names and assigned us to the vehicles. Before I loaded into the bus, I held Kennedy and gave her one last kiss. Kennedy's eyes, red with a subtle hint of tears, pierced my soul. She said, Assalam alaikum, or peace be upon you, in Arabic. My last words to her were, no promises.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to Smokepit Fairytales Chapter 3. I'd like to thank my voice actors, Chuck Lavaki, Dan Brady, and Matt Kupski-Cavicius. And then I'd also like to thank my patrons and everyone who's bought in a war chest. And then the way the Patreon's going to work, I guess really depending on when you watch this. And this first book notwithstanding here. But when I make new audiobook stuff, like I will have on YouTube, the chapters, put up on a schedule, and then, I'll throw them over on Patreon, like right when I get done editing them. So, you get them a little early access there. And then, like, for reference, today's August 5th, and the last chapter of the Smokepit Fairytales, audio book doesn't hit fucking Spotify, I think, until, for like another week still, but it's been on Patreon for, almost a month. So yeah, fun little perk. And then I also add in, like, if I got any extra stuff in there, you can just download that over there, but it's its own thing. All right, I'll see ya.